started my new job at the airport on a rainy Thursday in March. Night security isn't glamorous, but it pays well enough. And after years of bouncing between shifts at warehouses and hotel lobbies, the idea of steady work in one place appealed to me. My shift ran from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., when the concourses are mostly empty and the public address system goes quiet except for the occasional maintenance call. The first thing I noticed about the job was the silence. Not total silence, but that layered hum of air handlers, distant fans, and the faint rattle of cleaning carts rolling over tile. In the daytime, an airport is a storm of sound, rolling luggage, boarding announcements, the constant shuffle of feet. At night, it's just the bones of the building breathing. The second thing I noticed was how different the airport feels when it's nearly empty. You'd think the absence of crowds would make it relaxing. It doesn't. The concourses feel too long, the seats stretch in endless rows, and the reflections in the big windows don't always line up with the light behind you. On my second week, I got my first call to gate C23. It was 2:40 a.m. when the radio crackled. "Hey, Mike, can you check C23? Cleaning crew says there's a guy sleeping there again." I was still new enough to the job that I just said 10 to 4 and started walking. The cleaners were an older couple, both Filipino, who barely spoke above a whisper. I spotted them leaning on their mops halfway down Concourse C. When I approached, the woman gave me a look that I can only describe as cautious relief, like she was glad someone else was about to deal with whatever was down there. "He's there," she said simply. The man just nodded. I rounded the corner towards C23 expecting to see some bleary-eyed traveler who'd missed a flight. And sure enough, there he was, middle-aged, neat suit, hair combed straight back, a leather briefcase on his lap. He sat bolt upright, chin slightly tilted down, eyes closed. He looked so still I thought he might be meditating. "Sir," I called, keeping my tone even. "Airport's closing up this section. You'll need to move to the main seating area." No reaction. I stepped closer, boots tapping lightly on the carpet strip near the gate. "Sir, do you need medical?" I stopped. The seat was empty. No movement, no sound of footsteps, nothing. Just empty vinyl seats under the fluorescent lights. I checked both ends of the seating row, scanned toward the restrooms, no one. It didn't make sense. The cleaner's mop bucket was still visible behind me. They hadn't passed me. The man would have had to slip past me to get out, but he never did. I told myself he must have moved in those seconds I blinked and looked away, though I couldn't figure out where. When I returned to the cleaners, the woman asked, "He's gone, yes?" I nodded, unsure how to answer. She only said, "He always goes." Later that week, I mentioned the incident in the break room. Two other guards, Rick and Sanchez, exchanged glances. "C23, Sanchez said. "The sleeper." Rick smirked. "You've seen him already?" "Damn, it usually takes a few months before rookies get that honor." They told me the story in bits, between bites of vending machine chips and sips of burnt coffee. According to them, the sleeper was a man who died in the late 90s at that gate. Heart attack, right before boarding. He was supposed to be on a connecting flight to Boston. That same flight later crashed due to an engine failure. Sanchez said some of the older staff used to joke that maybe he wasn't supposed to make that trip. Over the years, night shift workers had seen him sitting at C23. Always upright, always in the suit, always with the briefcase. Sometimes he'd vanish when approached. Other times, they said, he'd hand over an old boarding pass, and when the staff looked away and back, he'd be gone, but the pass would remain. Rick grinned like it was a good campfire tale. Sanchez didn't smile at all. I chalked it up to airport folklore until it happened again. This time it was a quiet Tuesday night, a week later. The cleaners hadn't even radioed. I was just doing my rounds. From halfway down the concourse, I saw him. Same man, same seat, same briefcase. I slowed my steps, watching for any hint of movement. The distance between us closed with that strange elastic feeling long hallways have at night. He didn't move. When I reached conversational range, I said softly, "Sir, are you?" He opened his eyes. They weren't cloudy or strange, just normal brown eyes, but the look in them was wrong. Not threatening, not even angry, more like resigned, as if I'd interrupted something he'd already endured too many times. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a ticket. "Boston," he said. His voice was quiet, flat. "I'm going to Boston." I took the ticket. It was a boarding pass, creased and faded, for Midwest Airlines Flight 278, Seat 14A. Date: March 19th, 1999. When I looked up again, the seat was empty. I kept the boarding pass. I didn't tell Rick or Sanchez. I didn't tell the cleaners. I just kept it in the inside pocket of my jacket and tried not to think about it. But every time I passed C-23 on my rounds, I felt the skin on the back of my neck tighten. The airport's CCTV system keeps recordings for 30 days. That weekend, when the control room was quiet, I pulled the footage for the nights I'd seen him. On the March 12th video, there's a long shot of me walking towards C-23. The row of seats is visible. Empty. I walk right up, pause, look around. I talk to no one. Then I turn and walk away. But I remembered the man sitting there. I remembered his suit, his briefcase. I remembered speaking to him. The March 19th video, the night of the boarding pass, was the same. From the camera's angle, I walk toward the empty seats, stop, bend slightly forward, then stand upright holding something in my hand. No man in the frame. A month later, Sanchez asked me during a smoke break, "You still seeing him?" "Why?" I asked. He tapped ash from his cigarette. "Some folks say once you see him more than twice, it's a pattern. He shows up for you again. More often." "Pattern for what?" I asked. He shrugged. "Don't know. Only people who've had him more than 3 times are not around anymore. Quit the job. Or left without notice. One guy just didn't show up for work. Apartment was empty." Rick, overhearing, laughed it off. "Don't feed the rookie ghost stories, man." But Sanchez didn't laugh. April 9th. C-23 again. This time I didn't try to approach. I stayed at the far end of the concourse and watched. He didn't move. Not once. No other passengers in sight. No staff. No cleaners. Just the sound of the air handler and the distant hum of a floor polisher somewhere behind me. I turned to leave. When I reached the break room later, I found the boarding pass sitting on the table. Same date, same flight, same seat. I hadn't taken it from him. I hadn't even gone near him. The cleaners started avoiding C-23 on my nights. I noticed they'd leave that section for last, sometimes skipping it until after I'd done my rounds. One night, I asked the woman why. She looked at me with tired eyes. "He's yours now. I haven't shown anyone the 3 boarding passes I have now. The paper is yellowing, the ink smudged, but the names and dates are clear. Same name, same tomorrow's date. Every time. It's past 3 a.m. as I write this, sitting in the staff lounge. In a few minutes, I'll have to make my last round of the night. C-23 is on that route. Sometimes, when I'm halfway there, I hear the faint clink of a briefcase clasp being opened and closed. And every time, I swear it's closer than the night before." I had been working airport security for 5 years before I transferred to night duty at Concourse D. It was the older part of the terminal, long, dimly lit at night, with carpet that had been replaced so many times the floor felt uneven underfoot. My first night there, the day shift officer handed me the keys and gave me one piece of advice. "Don't spend too long in the staff corridor behind gate D14. I laughed and asked why. He said, "Bad air back there," and left before I could press him. The first couple of weeks were routine, escorting cleaning staff, checking badge doors, making sure the gates were locked. Concourse D was half shut down after midnight. By 1 a.m., the lights dimmed automatically, and the only sound was the echo of my footsteps. Then, on a Thursday at 2:15 a.m., I got a radio call from maintenance. "Security, can you check D14? Something dripping from the service hatch." I headed down. The service hatch was a locked panel in the wall near the jet bridge door. When I got there, I saw a thin trail of something dark running down the white paint. The overhead lights flickered as I unlocked it. Inside was a narrow staff corridor, one I'd never been in before. The walls were close, lined with utility pipes. The smell hit me first, metallic, sour. I followed the drip. It was coming from a joint in the ceiling. I radioed back, told them to send someone from facilities. They didn't seem surprised. The next night, I walked past D14 again. There was a small maintenance crew working near the hatch. One of them, an older guy with a bent posture, caught my eye. "You new to nights?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Then you don't know about the kid." He told me, without lowering his voice, that in 2006 a young baggage handler had been killed in that corridor. He'd been moving bags late at night when someone attacked him, stabbed him twice, and left him in the service hall. The killer was never found. The corridor wasn't on camera back then, and no one heard anything over the noise of the baggage belts. They didn't close the hallway, too costly, but at night, people said you could hear the sound of a cart moving down it, even when it was empty. 2 weeks later, I had my first personal incident in D14. It was a slow shift. I decided to take the shortcut through the staff corridor, just to see if the story was all talk. Halfway through, the air went still. No hum of the ventilation, no distant luggage belt clatter, just quiet. Then I heard it, the squeak of cart wheels behind me. I turned, expecting to see one of the cleaners. The corridor was empty. I waited. The sound came again, closer this time. A steady squeak. Pause, squeak. Pause, like someone was pushing a heavy load in short bursts. The hair on my arms rose. I stepped backward until I reached the door to the main concourse and shoved it open. The sound stopped instantly. That would have been the end of it, just a weird night. Except for what happened in July. A man had been found dead in the employee lot, stabbed. No witnesses, no cameras covering the far corner where it happened. Police said it was probably a robbery. When they released the suspect's description over the radio a few days later, my stomach turned. The guy they were looking for, tall, thin, shaved head, matched the composite sketch of the killer from 2006 that maintenance kept taped up in their break room as a kind of morbid joke. It had been over 15 years. Since then, I've avoided the D14 corridor unless absolutely necessary. Sometimes I still hear the squeak of cart wheels when I walk past, especially on quiet nights. And I've noticed something. The sound isn't random. It always stops right behind me, just out of sight. I started working nights at the airport because I thought it would be easy money. No passengers, no chaos, just a paycheck for keeping an eye on a mostly empty building. The job I got assigned sounded even easier, monitoring the Terminal E inventory room. If you've never worked in an airport, the inventory room is where they keep all the stuff you don't think about: extra boarding podiums, stanchions for lines, wheelchairs, spare signage, printers for boarding passes, piles of baggage tags in every color. It's like a storage closet the size of a small warehouse. The one in Terminal E was tucked away behind a badge-only door in a quiet corridor most passengers never saw. No windows, no sound from the concourse. On my first night, the day shift guy handed me the keys and said, "Just log the counts, lock it up, and keep your radio on. Oh, and don't leave things out of place. Someone upstairs hates that." I thought he meant a supervisor. Now I'm not so sure. The room smelled faintly of dust and printer ink. I did the inventory check: 12 gate podium signs, 18 wheelchairs, 6 printers, 15 sets of stanchions, stacks of tags in 5 colors. I signed the log, locked the door, and went to do a patrol around the terminal. When I came back an hour later, nothing had changed. Easy job. On my third night, I noticed something odd. The log said 12 podium signs. I counted 13. I figured the last shift had miscounted. I fixed it in the log. The next night, there were only 11. No one else had signed the sheet. The door was locked when I arrived. I told myself it was just a paperwork error. Airports run on paperwork errors. It was the wheelchairs next. I lined them up against the west wall, neat, straight, touching the baseboard. When I came back from lunch, 3 of them were in the middle of the room. The cameras in the corridor showed no one entering. No one had signed the log. I pushed them back into place and told myself someone on the day shift was playing a prank. I mentioned it to Mark, a baggage supervisor who'd been around forever. He didn't laugh. He just said, "You're in the old lost and found room. You know that." Before Terminal E was renovated, the room had been where they stored unclaimed passenger belongings before auctioning them off or destroying them. Mark said there was one shipment that came in after a commuter plane crash in '88. Luggage that survived, still intact, never claimed because everyone on the flight died. The story was that the belongings would move at night. Just small stuff at first, a coat on a different hook, a bag turned the other way, but it kept happening until the room was emptied. I told him that was just a ghost story. He told me, "Yeah, except the crash bags were in your exact room." I decided to test it. I brought a GoPro from home and set it up in the corner. I lined everything up perfectly. Podium signs against the north wall, wheelchairs on the west, tags sorted by color, printers on their shelf. For the first 2 hours of footage, nothing moved. Then, at 1:37 a.m., the wheelchairs slid forward 3 feet. Not tipped, not bumped, slid. The podium signs tilted, one after another, like someone brushing past. The tag stacks rearranged themselves, blue tags on top instead of red. No people, no shadows, just movement. At 2:15 a.m., the camera went black. Battery dead. Even though it had been fully charged, I started locking the door every time I left the room. But one night, as I was logging the wheelchairs, I heard footsteps in the corridor. Slow, heavy, deliberate. I called out, "Mark, is that you?" But the footsteps stopped. When I opened the door, the hallway was empty. The cameras showed nothing. By now, the movements weren't random. The wheelchairs were always facing the door when I came back. The podium signs formed a kind of funnel toward the center of the room. And every single night, the blue tags ended up on top of the stack. I decided to remove the blue tags entirely, just to see what would happen. I took the whole bundle and locked it in a supply cabinet across the hall. The next night, the tags were back in the main stack, blue on top, and the cabinet was still locked. I was finishing my count when something fell behind me, a sharp clatter that echoed through the room. I spun around. One of the heavy boarding pass printers was on the floor, not tipped over from the shelf, placed on the floor, facing me like it had been set there deliberately. It had been on the top shelf when I started my shift. There's no way I wouldn't have heard someone moving it. My hands were shaking when I put it back. I started to notice a schedule. The movements didn't happen until after 1:30 a.m. They stopped by 3 o'clock, and they were more extreme the nights I was in the room during that time. One night I stayed, sitting in the corner with the lights off. At 1:42 a.m., the temperature dropped. The air got heavy, like before a thunderstorm. The wheelchairs rolled forward. The podium signs scraped softly against the wall. Then, in the faint light from the exit sign, I saw a shadow cross between the shelves. Not my shadow, not shaped like mine. I was locking up when I felt a hand on my shoulder. I whipped around. No one, but the door to the corridor, the one I'd just locked, was standing wide open. I'd had enough. I told my supervisor I wanted off the post. She said fine, but could I do one more week until the replacement came in? The next night, when I opened the log sheet, I froze. The last pages were torn not completely, but enough to write anything onto it. My breaths became heavy, and with uneasiness I ran outside as fast as I could to the main office area. I didn't finish the shift, and went home. Aftermath. I never went back to Terminal E's inventory room, but every now and then, passing through the corridor, I hear the faint squeak of wheelchairs rolling, always just out of sight. And if I glance through the little inspection window in the door, the blue tags are always on top.